drink a beer every once in a while. Now the microbrewery's here. And we have, like I said earlier, this is a destination now. People come here. So the more the people come here and the more they buy, the more local option sales tax goes up, more the hotel motel tax goes up, and then now we can focus on what the rest of the city needs. We've had a few bumps in the road in the last few years where we've had to take a lot of money and put into the streets. Now the areas in the old part of town has not been taken care of anywhere near as much as we'd like. But the main thing that we really need to work on is we bring in more businesses, that brings in more people. More people bring in more taxes. And then you get more local option sales tax. You get the opportunity to have people look at it, come back, stay, and even move here. So more people move here, the more taxes we get. So then now we have to start working on trying to get the rest of the town moving in the right direction, because we have solved most of the problems in the streets. We still have a lot to do. We just got done with a CIP that we ended up putting more money into taking care of the concrete streets. Now we have to take care of the old part of town with the blacktop. So that is one part that we really need to do, and we need to focus on going after the parks, and that's debt. If we can't do that, then we're not going to have debt, we're not going to have a park, and we're not going to get the streets done.
Well, having lived here only 5.5 years, you know, one of the reasons that I moved here was because of the downtown. So it's hard for me to be overly critical of some of those long-term decisions that were made to grow the community, and I try not to be. If we're going to be able to balance what we have and be good stewards of what we have and be successful with what we have, we really need to look at where we're at now, and we need to look at the future. Certainly there's things to be learned from the past, and maybe we can avoid certain mistakes that we may have been through. But we really need to look ahead and try and find balance between the different, you know, portions of our community. The downtown's great for LeClaire from a financial standpoint. I can't think of a better income source than people that don't live in your town coming in, spending money, and leaving their tax dollars here. That's a great, increase in GDP for a small town like LeClaire. I think there's a lot of good that can continue to come from that. But I do think that we need to find balance. When I look at, not to switch topics, but when you look at residential TIF and stuff too, when you look at the housing growth or the growth of businesses and stuff downtown, certainly you got to take care of the residents and the taxpayers that are here. And I do think that we should probably, you know, sometimes things on a large scale happen in large cycles. And so we went through a large cycle where we did put a lot of effort towards downtown. I'm not saying that that should be done with. There's still some developed areas down here that could certainly be filled out with some great businesses, bring even more tax dollars in and give us even more to do. But we definitely need to look at the big picture and make sure that you know, markets aren't oversaturated, that we don't have too many empty houses or too many empty buildings, or whatever the situation, you've got to look at what's there at the time and try to find a balance in there. And as far as economic development, you know, I don't do a whole lot on city council. I'm trying to get one of my clients to open up a business here, so I'm always trying to be a good liaison for the city, and it's a pretty easy sell to people. I love this town, and I always encourage other people to move their businesses here and move their families here.
I own a business in downtown LeClaire, just a couple blocks from here, and yet I also live above my store. So my home investment is here, my church is here, my services are here. I feel I have a good balance of what's needed in which direction. We don't always need more stores. There's room for some industrial growth, small industrial growth. Don't get too scared there. But the big thing is that commercial taxes bring in a higher tax base for the city of LeClaire, whereas I think 60 to 80%, they hold them all back, so I'm not sure what the numbers are this year, stay in LeClaire, whereas residential, only 40% stays here. Local option sales tax has been talked about, but we share that in all of Scott County, so that's just a real small amount of what actually stays here. What we do need to do is, I agree with Jesse, is we have to be good stewards with what we have, and we do need to keep going forward, because if we're not, we are dying. So to keep a good balance, you need to choose wisely who's going to represent your interests. Not just the businesses and not just the homeowners, but there has to be a balance. There was something else I was going to say, and I'm so nervous I can't remember. I'll have to slide it into another question.
Problem solved. Okay.
By the time you get this far down the line, most things are just I think smart growth is really important. I think that the downtown's awesome, but I do think that what comes to my mind is we need diversity. So not just retail, more retail is great, but maybe different sorts of retail. As some other people mentioned, I think things like new service companies and soft industrial would be great because the commercial taxes are important to all of us. It helps keep our residential taxes down. And while it's not really wasn't really part of the question, I also think we need to look, when I went around and meet people, I got a lot of feedback that there's a real strong need to find better opportunities to get parks and recreation for our kids. So however we do that, I think there's great opportunity there in terms of public-private partnerships, and I know there's grant money out there available. So aside from our focus on growing, keeping the businesses growing, let's see if we can also find an opportunity to get some more space for our kids.
Well, I'm at the end, so can I just say ditto? I mean, is it that easy? So the question was, how we left the rest of LeClaire out? The answer is yes. It's very simple. We have got through 2027 to 2028, $7.64 million of TIP obligation in TIP District 1. If that's not an eye-raising topic, we're missing the point. Of the TIP dollars that are collected from the City of LeClaire in a business district, 90% of those Scott County assessed values do not go to our school system. They do not go to the county. 100% of them go to the city, which go right back to the developer. We've got $7.6 million that we've invested in developers, and we're not going to see a return on that until 2026. So was the rest of LeClaire left out? Absolutely. But we can't change that. All we can do is manage for tomorrow. TIF District 1, which is the downtown district, has great opportunity and great growth. I am pro-business. I own a business in Illinois, so I am paying a state that's in 100% debt. So I understand. At least we're in Iowa, we see some of that income coming back to our community. Between 2000 and 2010, according to the census, LeClaire has seen a 33% growth in the number of citizens. That is the fastest growing city in all of the Quad Cities. So we have to make sure we manage that growth on the residential and commercial side. Just to reiterate, I am pro-business, I am pro-development, but I'm going to be on a council to make sure that we manage that growth effectively, that we manage our budget, that we have a budget in place, and that we manage our debt every year. We can't go back and say, hey, I'm not going to meet that obligation, because we have those obligations. Those are already been done, so we don't want to dwell on those. We do want to focus on the future to make sure that the downtown district continues to grow in the right direction that we've seen over the last 5 years. 5 seconds left. Vote Jason.
Well, I have the opportunity to talk about one of my favorite subjects, and that's property taxes. I was a former Scott County supervisor, and that's all we talked about was property taxes. So there are several questions on property taxes and property tax increase as well as fiscal responsibility. So the question is, what other forms of revenue would you support that would help LeClaire balance its budget and decrease its reliance on property tax increase? And I think I'll start with the second person here.
I guess if I understand your question is on the taxes, what would we do if we would not rely on tax?
No, you
Tax.
still rely on taxes, but how? What other ways can you balance them and decrease the reliance on property tax?
Okay, one of the reasons is tourism. That has increased tremendously in the last 10 years. And I have to give the mayor and the council back in 2000 to start thinking about what LeClaire needed. And they redid the downtown area. They put a new city hall in. They put the money into the library, the levy, new police station, new public works, and we started to generate equipment for the public works to do their job better. And then also, when we got to the point of the tourism increasing, our local option sales tax jumped, our hotel motel tax jumped, and we used that to help pay for some of the debt that we've got. It was brought up about the debt that we have. We actually have $52.5 million debt overall. 34.7 is TIF debt, which is paid back by the people that live in those TIF areas. That's not paid back by everybody. The rest of the debt went to part of the sewer plant, which we had to put in. We didn't have no choice. We were forced to do that. So you take away the $10 million on the sewer plant, you end up with $7 million of actual debt that each and every one of us have to pay for. And those are streets which we have to take care of. And we try to do as much as we can to bring other avenues in to help pay for the taxes. Right at this point, we've lowered the levy rate down, and we still pay our bills. Thank you.
Property taxes, what a fun topic. As I talk to people, honestly, and this is not to be condescending to anyone, if you do know, excellent, good on you. But most of the people that I talk to are not familiar with how our taxes work. They're not familiar with how their tax bill works or how the levy rates work. A lot of people I speak with are not familiar with how the rollback works. You know, I don't really have of course I want to see low taxes, but when I look at the taxes, I just look at raw data. It is what it is. What I do know is that I did vote this past year to reduce the levy rate for next year. Was it enough for everyone? I don't know. That's your opinion, but I know that I voted to reduce them, and the mayor used a longer-term number. I've been basing my research off of, I go by whatever the county auditor's website has. They have 15 years worth of tax information posted in levy rates. We do have the lowest levy rate in the past 15 years. Now, does that automatically result in lower taxes? Not necessarily, because there's other factors that contribute to that dollar amount. But there has been an effort made. It's interesting because when I look at the county as a whole, I've actually been critical of some of the other taxing authorities in that register on your tax bill in the past, and I've been very vocal about some of those things. Not here in LeClaire, but down at the county building. LeClaire has actually done a good job of holding its taxes in balance. They are some of the highest in the area, but in the past 15 years, if you take the taxes right now based on the last 15 years average, LeClaire has the lowest amount of growth at 8% versus that average than any taxing authority in Scott County, with the exception of the assessor's office, which is a very, very small tax to begin with. So the answer is, I think that we need to continue to find efficiencies within the city. I've worked very hard to do that, and hopefully I'll get an opportunity sometime this evening to share some of the stories that some of the attempts I've made to reduce our budget so that we can continue to lower the tax levy rate.
Property tax, not my favorite. I pay someone else to take care of that, or I delegate it to my husband. But when it comes to the city, I pay a lot of attention to that. Now, I've been working on Economic Development Board for the last 5 years. So I got my pulse on the city. We are actively pursuing some development. The city comp plan, which needs to be updated, and I've been pushing for that, needs to address maybe some light industrial. We have already this year addressed to the heads of the departments to look for a way to raise some more funds by some of the fines and the fees for those who abuse the system. I'm sorry, but a $7 parking ticket is really cheap. That's cheaper than a parking lot, so people will just do what they want. So we need to balance that where we're not scaring people off, but making sure that there's some responsibility involved. And then our fees that we are generating are covering the cost of actually implementing those. So things haven't been updated for sometimes 25 years, and I'm sure the cost of doing business has gone up on those. Now, I live in a TIF district, and 90% of my taxes do not go into the general fund. They go into the TIF district. So guess what? Those of you who are not in a TIF district, you're paying my share of snow removal, police, fire, all the other budgetary implements that we have in place. So we do need to take a look at that, and we need to start rolling things off TIF in a manner that is responsible and faithful to our county and our schools. The other thing we need to do is we need long-range plans. And again, there's that city comp plan that hasn't been updated between 10 and 15 years. We need to look at streets at a longer plan instead of what's broken and we have to fix this year. We need to implement some of those things which we have on the cement streets. So I'm just asking you to take a look at what needs to be done and elect me. Thank you.
Mike, I couldn't agree more. I think the city needs a strategic plan. I don't know why it hasn't happened yet, but a 3 to 5 year plan is absolutely critical for any business or any entity in order to know what you're going to be doing year on year. I mean, you can build annual budgets, which are really important, and obviously that's critical, but if you don't have a 3 to 5 year plan to bounce that off of, then you're just kind of shooting at the target once a year. So I think it's critical you have to get all that information from all of the different departments, firemen, the police, the city hall, public works, and the whole 9 yards, and then start looking at what are the needs over the next 3 to 5 years and do some of that planning, because otherwise we really don't, it's hard for anybody to predict what the property taxes or any other taxes are going to do. Property taxes, if depending on what you look at, and I've looked at it a lot since I've decided to go do this, you look at the millage rate, and it has gone down for the most part over the last 8 years. But our actual taxes have continued to go up, even our city portion of the taxes, which a lot has to do with the appraised value. There is a certain amount that we can control, though. It's, as city administrators, that's our job. I also agree that the TIF piece, maybe there'll be a question about TIF later, but I'm guessing there will be. The TIF is what it is, I think, as Jason said. However, rolling TIF and looking to do additional TIFs, to me, is something that really needs to be carefully looked at, targeted, very strategic if we do it at all. And that will, again, help in the long run to start reducing our debt, which will also hopefully help us to reduce our property taxes. So there's only a certain number of things you can do. You can raise revenue on existing folks. You can find new places, you can raise revenue on existing businesses and folks, or you can find new business, which I think is still important. Or you can lower services, which you have to be very careful about. There may be some opportunity there, but you have to be careful. Safety's the number one thing.
So the question was, what other areas can we generate revenue from outside of property taxes? And when you look at the 2015 financial report from the City of LeClaire, 25% of the income side of the income statement is from TIF revenues, and 50% is from bonds. Well, those are both short-term and long-term debt. So then, how do you generate revenues in an area or a city? A city's not like a normal business where I can just go out and find new revenues. Most of our revenues come from taxes, taxation on businesses and taxation on the residents. So it's really tough to say how do we go out and generate more revenues for a city that traditionally doesn't operate like a normal business, because it's all based on taxes. But what you can do is you can say, how can we generate more sales tax? Because the city gets a percentage of that sales tax. So how do we bring new businesses into the environment without creating a conundrum of more TIF? The way a TIF is designed is you TIF a small area, that area stays as a TIF district, and that small area that was TIF then spurs additional growth around it. And this spurred additional growth is what funds that initial TIF. I'm all in for growth, and specifically business growth in LeClaire, as long as it's, as Dennis said, strategic. We have a plan and we can manage that. So I'm in favor of looking at other options or other revenues, but the challenge is the way that a city is structured, it's really hard to find additional revenues that aren't in the form of taxation, whether that's property taxes or business taxes. Just so you understand, the city tax levy rate in 2010 was the highest all time from the data that I have. So we're talking about the current levy rate. In 2010, it was the highest, but city council votes on that levy rate every year, and has consistently gone down from 2010 to 2016 to our current rate of about $14. So I applaud the previous members of city council to lower our levy rate, which in turn helps each of us individually, financially. Vote for Jason. 1 second.
All right.
To be fair, the property taxes are the main source of revenue for our city. There's just no getting around that. Very difficult to affect the revenue line with the other opportunities that we have. I mean, we do have hotel motel tax and the sales tax and so forth. Very difficult to increase those at a significant amount from where they are now without something drastic happening. We could sure look at fees, but we don't want to be putting more fees on our own residents. If some fees were appropriate for people that visit, that's one thing, but you don't want to drive